Sehr geehrte Überlebende aus West- und Osteuropa und aus Israel, sehr geehrte Vizepräsidentin des Internationalen Ravensbrück-Komitee, Madame Simone Gournet, sehr geehrte Ministerin für Umwelt, Gesundheit und Verbraucherschutz des Landes Brandenburg, Frau Anita Tack, sehr geehrte Bürgermeister der Stadt Fürstenberg, Herr Robert Philipp, sehr geehrte Leiterin der Gedenkstätte Ravensbrück, Frau Dr. Insa Eschebach. Ich möchte Sie alle begrüßen und betonen, dass es eine Ehre für mich ist, hier zu stehen und eine Ansprache, eine Gedenkrede halten zu dürfen. Die einleitenden Worte werde ich auf Deutsch sagen, dann auf Englisch fortfahren und für meine Abschlussworte habe ich Hebräisch gewählt. Diese 3 Sprachen haben mich geprägt und mich als Schriftstellerin und als Mensch geformt. Ich bin 36 Jahre nach Kriegsende geboren in Deutschland. Als Enkelin von Holocaust-Überlebenden bin ich mit Berichten, Geschichten, Erzählungen, Verschweigendem und Ausgelassenem über den schrecklichen Krieg und die grausame Verfolgung und Ermordung Unschuldiger aufgewachsen. Da ich immer schon Autorin werden wollte, war es nur natürlich, ein Buch zu schreiben. Sag es mir heißt mein erster Werk, das von der Beziehung zwischen Vergangenheit, Gegenwart und Zukunft handelt. Es ist eine sehr komplexe Beziehung, die man nur durch Erinnerungen und übermittelte Gefühle verstehen kann. In diesem Sinn sind Erinnerungen wie Schlüssel, die etwas öffnen und schließen, die uns ein- oder ausschließen können. Über das Gedächtnis und über das Erinnern und die Erinnerungen haben viele vor mir schon geschrieben und gesprochen. Trotzdem möchte ich meine bescheidenen und persönlichen Einsichten Ihnen alle gerne darstellen und erklären. I was asked to speak here today as an author of a novel that deals with the impact of the Holocaust on the following generations. I was also asked to speak as a member of the 3rd generation and as a woman. For me to be standing here as one who belongs to all 3 groups fills me with pride. It is a great honor for me. Tomorrow we celebrate Pesach, Passover, a Jewish holiday that commemorates the Exodus and symbolizes rebirth. On the eve of Passover, families all over the world sit together into the wee hours of the night for the Seder dinner meal, before which and after which they recall the story of how the Hebrew people gained their freedom after 400 years of harsh slavery under Egyptian rule. Everything during this annual ceremony centers on passing the ancestors' story of slavery and liberation to the young generations so that they remember, so that we remember, so that our collective memory will be formed. There are also other, more recent stories that we pass on to our children and that shape our collective memory. Such is the story of Berta Landskrona, an Austrian Jew who survived several concentration camps before being liberated in Ravensbrück 66 years ago. When I told Berta's granddaughter, who is a friend of mine, that I would visit Ravensbrück on the day before Passover, she told me that for Berta, the Holocaust had transformed Passover from a time of celebration and happiness into a time of utter and irrevocable fear. In the last 3 years of the war, Pesach coincided with Hitler's birthday, a day on which Berta experienced how the guards sought to give Hitler a perverse birthday gift. They murdered double the amount of innocent prisoners. This became the idea of Passover for Berta, and it accompanied her for the rest of her life. As I was sitting in my apartment in Tel Aviv, trying to write this speech, I tried to recall the first time I learned of the atrocities of the Holocaust, and I couldn't do it. I could remember the first time I went to school, the first time I learned of an earthquake, and the first time that I heard of an airplane crash. But I could not recall having ever not known about the Holocaust. It is and has always been the background music to my life. It is engraved in the landscape of my memory. And it explains why I wrote my book, Sag es mir, which explores the relationship between a member of the 3rd generation, Fela, and her grandfather, Moshe, a survivor, a character whose life story is that of my own grandfather. I delved into the relationship between past, present, and future because I knew and I felt that my life as someone who was born 36 years after the Holocaust had ended would have been different had the Holocaust not happened, and so would have been the lives of many others. With my writing, I investigated memory. Memory is a tricky thing. It plays tricks on us, and we play tricks on it. In biological and psychological terms, memory is said to be an organism's ability to store, hold, and recall information, feelings, and experiences. But what happens when these experiences are too terrible? As terrible as what many of you had to bear on your bodies and minds for the rest of your lives, even after liberation. What happens then? What happens when an organism does not wish to recall or retain any of the experiences? And what happens when a person wishes for nothing more than for memory loss to occur? With memory being on the one hand accessible and on the other hand not at all accessible, questions were born. Namely, how does what is stored in memory or pushed away from memory, how does it pass from generation to generation? Like language? Like genetics? Like a habit? During the Nazi regime, here in Ravensbrück, only 90 kilometers from the capital Berlin, in the heart of Germany, crimes took place on a daily basis. Ones which had been unimaginable beforehand and even afterwards. They're unimaginable even today. Here they took place against women, some of whom survived and are here today. Hungarian, Poles, German, French, Russian, Jews, gypsies, lesbians, communists. All were brutally enslaved and dehumanized. Biologically speaking, women serve the function of giving birth, becoming pregnant and bearing children. Women nurture and nourish babies. They are known for their compassion. They are the creators of life, the creators of the future. And by targeting women, that is exactly what the Nazis tried to kill, the future. Many of you were imprisoned here at the age in which you bear children, and it is through your courageous testimonies, through your brave female voices, that we now know about the sadism and the brutalities that took place here. Your voices, broken, angry, sad, wise, were passed on. And now it is your voices, which include the voices of the following generations too. Voices of individual memories are what compose our collective memory. Like with Passover, language plays a major role in the creation and the maintenance of collective memory. Whether the second generation was spoken to, or whether it had to live with silences, it understood many things. It is not trauma that was passed on to them, but trauma's impacts. Fears and frustrations, ideologies, how to love, and how to say goodbye to a family member who, for example, simply embarks upon a short trip. And these impressions have shaped and continue to shape those who were affected, directly and indirectly, by the systematic killing that took place during the brutal and inhuman Nazi regime. Much of my generation, the third generation, has had the burden and the privilege to hear about the suffering of our grandparents who experienced war and genocide firsthand. In many ways, we are the last generation to have the memories of the survivors, your memories, be planted into our consciousness, directly by you and not by a third party. Albert Einstein once said, memory is deceptive because it is colored by today's events. Everyone knows he was a genius, but what he says here is that the still unknown events of the future will shape how we remember the past. The Holocaust, the camps, Ravensbrück. No one knows how, as a whole, the memory of Nazism will be dealt with in 20 or 50 or 70 years. But what we must know is that hearing the testimonies firsthand endows us with a responsibility. A sincere, a deep, and honest responsibility, never to let the events of the future, whatever they are, dictate the nature of our remembrance. I felt at home when I was writing my novel, because as far as I can remember myself, I have tried to understand whether it was better to remember or to forget. And I have also always wondered, how can one remember and how can one forget? I will not claim to have found an answer to what is possible, easier, or better, but I will claim that we must learn from the past, because if not from the past, we have very few places to learn from. I would like to say one more thing about memory. Memory is transmitted via language. After the war, the language to speak about what had happened did not exist. But over the course of time, in the 66 years that have passed, this language developed. The language also developed in literature, and it is this discourse of which I am a part. In my novel, I wrote, during the Holocaust Remembrance Day, when I was in the 4th grade, the grandfather of a classmate came to speak to our class. I remember nothing of his story, other than his telling us that he saw an SS soldier grab a naked baby by his legs and smash him against a metal street pole. It was then, we were not yet wearing women's clothes, that I stopped imagining I would ever give birth. Every day, I find out more about what it means to be a woman. It means to want to love and be loved. It means to strive for equal opportunities, and much more. But it also means to be afraid that my children might someday endure a Shoah of their own, because of what I know can be and has been done to women. Because it was done here. The most evil, the most criminal, it was done here. As much as remembering can be praised, so can forgetting. It is often as important to forget as it is to remember. That is, on a personal level, but not on a collective level. On a collective level, it is only by remembering that we can try to explain, to understand, to advance, and to prevent. Memories have the power to destroy. They can paralyze, prevent one from continuing with her or his life. For their power lies in their immediacy. Remembering takes you back in time and place. But remembering also has the power to rebuild. It can be a source of strength. When I said that I was asked to speak here today as a woman, as a member of the 3rd generation and as a Jewish author, I believe that I neglected to say one more thing. That I was also asked to speak here today as one who belongs to the generation of the future and of hope. Just as tomorrow evening we will tell the story of passing, we must also tell the story of Vaterlandsbrück. We must retain and maintain the memory of what happened here alive. We have managed to carry forth the memory of our ancestors' slavery and release, and it is my hope that my generation and those that follow will continue to keep alive your memory of persecution and also of rebirth for the following generations.
Ojcze nasz, który jesteś w niebie i widzisz naszą tędolę tułaczą, weź nas swe dzieci w swą boską opiekę i utul łzy, co duszę tłoczą. Święć się imię Twoje i tu i na obcej ziemi, gdzie wyrwane przemocą z rodzinnego domu, wśród wrogów w skrytości modlić się musimy. Bądź wola Twoja, Panie, wołamy w pokorze, wierząc, że cierpienie i radość od Ciebie pochodzą. Ty nam wszystko dajesz, wielki, mocny Boże. I ta wiara głęboka dolę naszą słodzi. I chleba powszedniego nie poskąp nam Panie, daj sił do wytrwania i dla ducha wiarę, że nie bez celu jest nasze aż tutaj zesłanie, że cierpimy może za swe winy stare i odkup nam nasze winy, powstaw w słabości, gdy zwątpienie i ból rozpaczą duszą naszej głowy. I gdy nie jedna, Panie, pod Twym krzyżem pada. I nie wódź nas na pokuszenie, co nam gubi duszę, ale zbaw nas od wszystkiego złego i daj szczęśliwy powrót do domu naszego. Dziękuję.